Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. I'm Kirthi Kalyanam. I'm a professor of marketing at Santa Clara University. I'm also the executive director of the Retail Management Institute, which is located in the Leavey School of Business. The Retail Management Institute is a unique kind of center, being a business school-based retail center in the United States. Today, I'm joined by my chair of my board, Michael Schriver, and one of our longtime board members, Kris Bazán, who's also, we will talk about her as a multiple Bronco. And both of them are going to talk to us today about an extraordinary opportunity, the change that's happening in the retail industry, how complex it is, how to think about it, how large it is, and how to prepare students at Santa Clara with an understanding of that change so they can not only build careers in this industry, but become future leaders in this industry based on the values and principles of Santa Clara University. Welcome, Michael, and welcome, Kris.
Good morning from Hong Kong. I am the president of North Asia for LVMH Group, which puts me in charge overseeing all of the LVMH Group brands in Greater China and Korea.
And Michael, you recently, literally about less than a year ago, joined us as chair of the Retail Management Institute Advisory Board, correct?
Yes, a little over a year ago, along with our vice chair, Carl, I joined as the chair of the advisory board. It's been certainly a super interesting run in the last 12 months.
Yeah, and he's keeping me very busy. By the way, you have a Bay Area connection. Tell us about that.
Well, I lived and worked in San Francisco for 10 years. When I started my career at LVMH DFS, I was based in San Francisco, doing a variety of different roles inside DFS, which is the travel retail arm of LVMH.
Yeah, and before that, background with Macy's?
20 years at Macy's, starting in a very, very long time ago in the 1970s as a sales associate on the selling floor. So 46 years in the retail industry, starting from the first job selling boys' clothing at Bamberger's then, today Macy's department store.
Very good. Thank you. Kris, welcome to our call. Tell us where you're joining us from.
Thank you, Kirthi. I'm joining from London, England.
Tell us a little bit about your job title and what you do, and also your role with RMI.
Sure. I am the senior director in our retail engagement, marketing, and merchandising group for Apple. I've been at Apple for 22 years and maybe a few months. Going on 23, and I am on the advisory board with Michael and yourself and many other esteemed colleagues.
And you have a very strong Bay Area connection and actually multiple Santa Clara connections. Tell us a little bit about the Bay Area connection and the multiple Santa Clara connections. At Santa Clara, we call people like you like double or triple Broncos. I don't even know what the terminology is. But tell us more about that.
I like that. No, I've lived in the Bay Area almost my entire life. So since 1978, I've been in the Bay Area and my family is there. And they're looking forward to us moving back from London to be with them again. And you're right. I graduated undergrad from Santa Clara with a degree in marketing and finance, and then went back for my MBA part-time. So I was working full-time and going back to school in the evenings. And that took a little over about 3 years to complete my MBA.
And briefly, I remember that the evening MBA program was at the Leavey School of Business is an absolute shining light. I remember all of you executives from all the Silicon Valley companies coming in, and so many from every company, right? Every big name, you turn around, there'll be 5 people in the room from Apple, 5 people in the room from another big HP, and so on and so forth. Very, very heady place to have an MBA program.
It's true. And I also think it's a great place to be a student as well, because Santa Clara can draw on so many great companies to have guest speakers, guest professors, and even some projects where we got to work on many emerging markets, up and coming companies that were looking for advice from smart students. So I think that's true also, Kirthi, for RMI, where you've been able to bring in companies from all over the Bay Area to help our students.
Thank you for that, Kris. And I want to double click on that for 1 second, which is because of where we are, it's impossible to hide from the industry that is around us. And it's also really hard not to be very practical. We have all these incredibly successful companies. So many schools may struggle with all of that. We don't. It just comes naturally to us. And we've been doing this for a long time. I want to make one more point. I don't want to forget this. You're not just a double Bronco. You are like a triple Bronco, right? There's another Bronco in your life, correct?
Well, actually, Kirthi, I don't think you even know this yet. My son is going to be a Bronco this fall. So my husband was also a Bronco. I met him at Santa Clara, and my son is going to be a Bronco this fall. So we're going to have an entire family of Broncos, which is fantastic.
When I used to be in Chicago, the Bulls used to call that a four-peat event. So we'll call that a quadruple event. And I'm using that in a very good way. So thank you very much again for, by the way, if I was in the retail business, I would thank you for your lifetime loyalty. So we much appreciate it. All right. So let me talk a little bit about one of the main themes today, which is the retail center is located in the business school at Santa Clara University. However, it offers a program to students. It's a minor in retailing, but it's a very broad-based business program. And one of the fascinating things about this program is that the retail industry is a very large industry in the United States. It's a $5 trillion industry. It's a gateway to all consumers. And many companies are retailers, right? People think of Apple as a technology company, but they're really a big-time retailer. People think of LVMH as a big brand or a holder of brands, but they're like huge retailing company. But retail is going through a phenomenal, once-in-a-lifetime transformation where e-commerce, technology, and consumer behavior is changing. And in addition to that, how they buy is changing. And this is very complicated. And depending on who you are, this change is very critical. Let's talk for a few minutes about that change and what you think is what you're seeing about that change. Michael, I want to kind of pivot to you on this. And then Kris, I'll come back to you in 1 second. Tell me, Michael, in your view, what is the kind of transformation that you have seen? And by the way, you've been in this industry, just like Kris, for a very long time. What's going on?
Well, of course, when I started in the industry, there were no computers, no internet, no mobile phones. And so there was only one way to operate retail, and that was through physical retail and through human-to-human interaction. Towards the end of my career at Macy's, we first introduced the online platforms at Macy's. In the United States, they were introduced as virtually separate companies from the department store, which I think established the online world and the offline world in the United States more as competitors than as collaborative partners. It's very different in other parts of the world, particularly China, where the two emerged at the same time, and therefore they are much more symbiotic, each one impacting and facilitating the other. But of course, the decision purchase is happening in different places depending on the product sector that we're talking about. Price points have an influence on whether consumers wish to transact online or they wish to see and feel and touch the product in person. And so we're in this extraordinarily dynamic moment where I feel that we are, every part of the retail channel is trying to find its proper positioning. In markets like the United States, where they grew up separately, I feel that it's a much more competitive environment where online, offline are competing for that same consumer. Whereas if I look at other markets like China, where the two grew up together, the two are very symbiotic. In fact, the stronger you are in your online universe, generally speaking, the stronger you are in your offline universe also. So it's quite a different phenomenon. But I think we are all trying to understand, interpret, and plan for the future in how the consumer is behaving in each part of the purchase journey and in that final decision of when, how, and where they purchase.
Thank you. Kris, your observations on, you've also seen this industry for a very long time. And are we right in saying that there's a huge transformation going on? And of course, maybe it's been going on for a while, but what do you see, and what's your take on this?
I think, building a little bit on what Michael said, it's very similar for a technology company like Apple. Looking at this omni-channel world, and how online and physical come together is really, really important for retailers. And I think, if you look at some of the big aggregators in places like China, like Tmall, they've really figured out a way to bring the experiences together for their customers and not make them choose one or the other. But I think the other thing that's really interesting about those aggregators is the way that they have integrated into the shoppers' lives in a really seamless and beautiful way. And I think we're not quite there in the US. I think Michael's right. We're seeing some, the leaders in the retail space are in China, and folks that can, companies like LVMH and Apple and others that are doing really well in Asia are looking at places like Tmall and Weibo and saying, how can I create an experience that's fantastic for shoppers? And I think the other thing that's really interesting to think about is with all this choice, and Michael said it years and years ago, there wasn't very much choice. The choice was the ball, and which of the different shops did you want to go into? But now, as consumers, we have so many choices of what we can buy, where we can buy it. I think retailers that are doing really well are retailers that are thinking around, what is that curation? What is that experience that I want to offer to my customers in a way that's really unique, whether they're in a physical space or an online space, or even in a social media space where they're not necessarily controlling all parts of the narrative. How do you show up as a retailer? And I think helping customers with that curation is something that is really, really important. And I think we're going to see more of that. The other thing that I think is really interesting is collaborations, kind of these unexpected collaborations. And so I've been seeing more and more of that. And Michael, some of your brands are doing a really fantastic job bringing back even collaborations that we saw in the past. I think about the Murakami Louis Vuitton collaboration that just recently came out, and that was something from years and years ago as well. And so we're seeing kind of this resurgence of some of those really interesting partnerships. And I think customers are looking for that. They're looking for those unique experiences. High-end brands with streetwear, that designer with like high street brands. I think those are some really interesting experiences that retailers are creating for shoppers. So
I want to quickly double click on something that both of you have mentioned, because I think it's very important. Shopping experiences now in China with apps like Tmall or with a super app like WeChat, that is something so different than anything that we are experiencing in the United States. And in many ways, it on the one hand, I admire it. It worries me that, one, our students have no exposure to this, and we have to work hard at figuring out how to bring attention to them. Every time I go to India, I'm shocked by the amount of retail delivery services available in India. There's a service called Denso that I occasionally use, where if you have to send a little gift to somebody across town, you pay a small amount of money and they come and pick it up from your house and deliver in 15 minutes. And when I was coming back to the US, my wife wanted me to bring an extra bag for her. And I thought she's going to come and drop it for me in person. I was mistaken. She sent it with Denso. And I get this little beep and I come down and they pick it up. We don't have infrastructure like that in the United States right now. I want to switch back to something that you said, Kris, and I want to ask Michael to comment about this, which is these collaborations, the kind of different brand collaborations you're talking about. It seems to me that another thing that's happening as a mega theme is that retailing and marketing, and at least these kind of brand collaboration-oriented marketing, are coming together in a way that probably was never the case, right? If you go back to 30 years ago, the retailer was a retailer and they had a marketing group that did something. But now I think there's a lot of retailers that are moving into what we marketing people call the upper funnel. So there's this enormous blending of marketing and retailing that's happening. Michael, talk to us a little bit about these collaborations and whether my observation is on point or not.
Well, I think I would start by, I think there's a very important word that's been used earlier in this, and that's experience. We are seeing, particularly post-COVID, and I can speak most seriously for China, that the luxury of experience is becoming much more important than the luxury of things. And collaborations point to this, because the Murakami collaboration for Louis Vuitton is about much more than just product. It was very experiential. It changed the Vuitton cafes. People were going to have their picture taken. It was really, the sale of the product was almost secondary to the creation of this experience. And so I think collaborations are a way that brands or retailers can deliver on this unexpected experience that consumers are looking for. I mean, it continues to come back to this point of it is all about the consumer journey in how we interact with them, how we introduce ourselves to them, how we inspire them and motivate them. And ultimately, the purchase is an outcome of all of the activities we do around this. It is not any longer, the retail world is no longer purely transactional. And those who are trying to make it a transactional world are the ones that are suffering, because people have too many choices in ways to purchase. And therefore, the ones who are winning are the ones who are really making it an experiential adventure in going out to purchase even something very simple.
I mean, those changes are so profound. And it's not just once in a generation, it's incredibly profound. And I observe on this because I'm a marketing professor. Historically, I have taught marketing, and many departments teach marketing. A few of them teach retailing, but very few of them bring them together. And again, that's something I think unique that we do at Santa Clara, because the Retail Management Center is in the Leavey School of Business, is closely integrated with the marketing department. And so we are in a very good position to integrate these two very, very diverse ideas where, as you point out, retail is no longer the transaction and its experience, and marketing has to be integrated into retail to create that experience, right? And this is a good kind of an opportunity to ask both of you a question. Perhaps a loaded question, perhaps a leading question, but I'll ask it anyway. What should a retail center at the Leavey School of Business, or some retail center like the one we have at Santa Clara, that has a desire to be world-renowned in its reputation, what should we be doing given this change? What should we do with our students? How do we prepare them? Your thoughts on that? Kris, we'll go with you first.
I think some of the work that you have done already in terms of bringing in technology and like micro certifications for students is really important, because I think, I believe strongly in the foundation of, a 4-year institution having a selected major or whatever that might be. I think that if you also are supplementing that with kind of smaller certifications, things like what you've done around online merchandising, where students can learn a tool that many retailers may be using, but learn the components of that, and graduate with not only a 4-year degree in business or computer science or whatever that might be, but also show that there's some real world certifications that they have acquired along the way. I think that's really, really important. And those are the kinds of things where, because technology is continuously changing, if you started 4 years ago on your degree, by the time you finish, there are going to be huge changes again and again in whatever field, and retail being one of them. And so I think by layering in some of these smaller certifications or additional skill sets that take advantage of those gains, whether they're technology gains or experience gains or whatever that might be, customer journey explorations, I think that's really, really, really important, and a great offering from the university. And I think the other thing is as much practical experience as we can give students along the way, whether that's lecturers coming in, whether that's internships that students are able to participate in, or actually visiting retailers in as many different places as they can, going on some retail safaris, as I like to call it. I think those are all experiences that are going to add to that degree and essentially make you more marketable as a student coming out of Santa Clara University, and looking at some of the great careers that may be in retail.
Michael?
Well, I agree with everything Kris said. I have a slightly different conclusion on that, however. I think that our role at Santa Clara University for retail students is more about teaching and understanding than providing knowledge. Understandings last a lifetime. I think the reason I can say relevant in retail 46 years after starting is not because I can repeat things that I did 20 years ago, but because I understand how they worked and why they worked. It goes back to the Murakami example. It's not so much to know that a collaboration with Murakami is successful and generates retail sales, but what about that collaboration is what generated the consumer interest and made it successful. Because if we can give people the understanding of what about this makes it successful and work, it lasts a lifetime. And it will apply itself in any business, in any sector in retail, perhaps in a different way, but the understanding is invaluable. And I think we need to leverage those things Kris was talking about, but take it just one step further in trying to help the students understand the why of why this is creating a positive and/or negative impact so that they can use this in years to come, particularly in a retail industry that is changing at such a rapid pace. Knowledge of yesterday is of not much value if you don't understand why that success or failure occurred.
Very well put, Michael. I think this speaks to me very much as a faculty member. Santa Clara is also renowned, and both the Leavey School of Business and the university are renowned for what we call our very research-oriented faculty. And what we do all the time is ask why. And it's very important, as you pointed out. It's not just describing, hey, we did A, B, C. It's asking why. And we believe that the knowledge of why, our ability to ask why, our ability to reason why is the skill set that really matters. Because what you're going to be reasoning about is going to be changing every 6 months. And that's so short-lived that it's the ability to reason and ask why that I think is very long-lasting. And I think that plays right into the heart of what we do. I want to lean into something that Kris used a very colorful word. You said retail safari. So I want to talk a little bit about that for a minute. Both of you and the rest of the board have been extremely generous in supporting our students, the entire Retail Management Institute class, to go on a retail, as you call it, a safari to New York City. And before that, we were doing this. We were doing it for a few years. We're taking a few students at a time. But with your support, a couple of years ago, we said we should take everybody. And we've been now doing this for a couple of years, and we had an extraordinarily eventful visit this year. And I would go back to the word safari, and we saw many gorillas in the mist. So let's talk about that a little bit. And first of all, Kris, thank you. You helped us visit the Apple store, the iconic store on Fifth Avenue that has got the famous glass pyramid on it. Underground, but you'll never realize it's underground. The store that you point out is open 24/7. And you joined us on some of these visits, and you were there with us with the students. Tell us a little bit about, you were there, you watched us, you watched the students go through it. Why was that important? And by the way, not everybody gets to be hosted in that store the way you did it for us. Talk to us a little bit about that. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we tried to help the students understand is sort of how do we think about that customer journey? And there's no better way to do that than kind of actually walking through the store and going through the different portions of the store, talking about the merchandising, talking about why the store is laid out the way that it's laid out, and not we have stores laid out in all different ways, but Fifth Avenue is a really interesting one. Why we made some of the design choices that we made in terms of the materiality of the store. I think those are all really important aspects of the craft of retail. And I think Michael said it earlier, the customer journey, though, is the piece that's really, really important, because you can have a really beautiful store, but if you haven't thought about what that customer journey is at every single moment, whether that's purchase, whether that's discovery, whether that's service. In our case, it's something like the Genius Bar. Then all of that beauty goes to waste, right? And so I think part of what we wanted to do is expose the students to all of that. And then I think the other part where we brought everyone back of house, and we met in our boardroom, was really to give them exposure to a few different people within Apple that are all part of the retail organization, but have very different careers and had very different journeys. And so the other thing that we did was spend some time with a number of different Apple employees talking about what their Apple journey has been. Where were they before Apple? Were they in retail? Did they come from another background? And helping students to understand what are all those pathways, because there are many pathways in retail. And so I think that was the other piece where we wanted to bring this idea of like, well, once you graduate, what can you do with this? What would that look like? And so I think that was really special. And I think this last time you might have even been able to do a few demos of a product in that work as well. So I think all of those things are really important and help students understand like what does it really mean to have a career in retail.
I was taken by several things in my visit, and every year I go, it's even more, everything, they always learn something new every time. I was very fun to watch an exchange between our students and your leadership team. And every one of them, the students are asking them, here's my background, how do I differentiate myself? I don't know much about this area, but how do I position myself or improve? And why would you hire somebody and go through that journey and how to position yourself? And there was this wonderful exchange between your leadership team and all the students in the room. I think it was extraordinarily informative and confidence building. I also remember we were shown a small video about Apple's vision around technology. And it's truly like back to the earlier themes that Michael and you both have been talking about. It's this experiential, let the human spirit flourish kind of theme. And it struck me a lot because at Santa Clara, we have spoken to many of our Jesuits, and over the years, they've been talking about how we have a Bannon Center for Jesuit Education, and they talk about how technology should allow the human spirit to flourish. And I thought it's like a page from Apple's ad, It was amazing. That was remarkable. And then I also noticed the store was so counterintuitive. Every retailer has a checkout area. There's no checkout area on that store because you can check out anywhere. Every retailer wants to get you to buy something, and here they want you to sit and browse and do nothing. And I saw so many people coming down, sitting there. I also noticed how you had built the lighting in the store, which changes so that it reflects the lighting outside. So you don't really know if it's night in the store. If it's day in the store, and it's not like the underground, area. That was, I think, a very, very remarkable experience. I could see the students' eyes light up in that store. No, it didn't stop over there. And thanks to you, we had a great time. Some of the leadership teams that we spoke to were people who had originally worked in opening the store, and they had actually collaborated with Steve Jobs. So it was remarkable to hear their real life experiences of how that was about and how all that came about. And of course, it didn't stop there. Then we went over to LVMH and Tiffany's, which Michael helped us do, and visited both those locations. And I think, Michael, you can kind of jump into this a little bit. LVMH has one of the most iconic pieces of real estate in New York City, correct? Next to Apple. And there's a design studio in front of that too. Can you talk to us just a little bit about those two things and what the students got to see?
Certainly. I think that there are really two very different examples of what's important inside the luxury industry. Tiffany, first, it's its flagship original location, and it's an iconic location in New York City. And therefore, it really was an exercise in brand positioning. With the investments made in the store, respecting its original architecture and heritage, but creating a modern version of that heritage for Tiffany today is a very important part of luxury brand positioning. And that store is very emblematic and extremely successful since it has come out of its renovation. Keeping in mind that we closed that store for 2 years in order to create that renovation and spent a fairly extreme sum of money in order to create what we created. But again, it is a permanent testament to the brand and establishes Tiffany, the brand, as the preeminent jeweler in the United States. Whereas across the street, we have a very different scenario happening. And I mentioned a few moments ago the luxury of experience. And while Louis Vuitton in this moment in New York City is in a temporary store, it is the furthest thing from a temporary store to most people when they walk inside. It's the permanent Louis Vuitton store is under renovation in this moment, with maybe the most iconic hoarding in the history of New York City. that has achieved a fairly record-setting visibility across the world. And people are still getting up in the wee hours of the morning to have their picture taken without cars in the intersection in front of that hoarding. But across the street, we created a temporary store, which is really all about the experience of the brand. You walk into a stack of trunks from floor to ceiling, going up 3 floors to the store. You see the Louis Vuitton Cafe. There are many elements to this store that are more about experience than about selling things. And I thought it was very important in this moment that the students be exposed to that side of what is going on in retail today. And I think that store is extremely representative of what is happening in the luxury industry today, for the importance of brands and retailers to create these experiential places where people can go, immerse themselves, and eventually hopefully buy your products.
Yeah, Michael, thank you for that commentary. And one other observation, not with us today, is Jamie Nordstrom, who's one of the Nordstrom family members that is also a board member at the retail center. And after we finished the LVMH visit, we went to the Nordstrom's Fifth Avenue store, Manhattan store, flagship store. And that was also a remarkable store. The Nordstrom family has an extraordinary history of not only being a very service-oriented retailer, but also having a workforce inside that really taps into a large number of their top salespeople are really first-generation immigrants. They have pictures on the wall in Nordstrom headquarters. It's amazing to see. Something about that culture lets people flourish in that store. I was personally very impressed to go through a tour, and they allowed us to host a student reception where we were able to invite alumni from New York City to meet our students, and that was a wonderful kind of way to wrap the whole thing up. It was truly a remarkable experience, and I think we did extraordinarily well. I want to kind of move forward a little bit to kind of a couple of closing comments related to this. One of the concerns that we all face is, are we not only providing the right education and perspective to our students, but are we future-proofing our students? Like, are we teaching them? Michael, both of you leaned into this already, but I'm going to go back to this again. Are we teaching them something that is very transient and that's going to just disappear? We are not future-proofing them, right? And we should be thinking more about that, because this is very, very important. Do you think, are we at the retail center thinking correctly about not only this very complex industry, and at least are we moving in the direction of saying we understand this complexity, and guess what? We are on a path to future-proofing our students' understanding of this, so that 15 years from now, there will be several things that they got out of this that will be kind of time immemorial. Kris, your thoughts on that? You were a Santa Clara student, so I want to I know this is close to your heart. So what are your thoughts? Are we in the right direction here? Would you give us a good grade, a passing grade? What's going on?
Well, I think I would give us a really good grade, because I think we touched on a little bit of this already, but there's a real practicality, I think, with RMI and a Santa Clara education, because you're in the Bay Area and you're able to tap into that talent. And I think what I love is the balance of theory and practice that comes with RMI. And I think you've done a really good job of bringing those two things together for students. I think the other thing too, and Michael touched on this a little bit earlier, of, what are the North Star, activities? What does that look like? Because there are things, and you were talking about it in terms of like case studies, Michael, of like things that you understood to be true. And I think some of that is like, what's that North Star for you? And I think some of those things can happen within a Jesuit institution that might not happen in another institution. And what I'm talking about is this idea of values and ethics and educating the whole person, which is something that Santa Clara has always been known for. And I think that all of those pieces, those values, are not something that has an expiration date. And I think that what we need in retail, and I believe Michael would agree with this too, is leadership around some of these areas that are very important in terms of ethics. and in terms of values. And so in retail, we might see that come to play in something like, do you have an ethical supply chain? What does that look like? Are you leading that in retail? It also might look like, we see a lot of retailers doing things around reuse, repair of, if we're talking about the clothing industry, and really looking at, how can we move away from something like fast fashion that is very damaging for the environment into something that could be more sustainable. And I think that is another value that students from Santa Clara and students really from around the world hold very true to their heart. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that don't have an expiry date on them. And while we should continue to educate students in the latest technology and some of the changes that are happening in retail, I also feel like making sure that we're being really true to our values and ethics that are important as a Jesuit institution is something that RMI and the business school can take forward as well.
Kris, you offered us a wonderful soundbite. You said the things we do should not have an expiry date. I just love that. It's a very important thing. I hold that close to my heart. Michael, your observations and comments. And by the way, I'm going to push you to a higher standard because you're my advisory board chair. And if you're not making progress, Kris is going to lower our grade over the next 3 years. Your observations.
No pressure, Michael.
Yeah.
Well, first, I would say I think that Kris made a whole host of very valid points, and I'm going to like to add to that in a slightly different twist. First, I believe that we are doing good work, and I think the reason why we're doing good work is because we have strong diversity on the board. Therefore, we have a lot of different voices coming in with different perspectives and opinions. Our diversity is very strong. Secondly, I think that as in this past year, the level of debate inside the board members has been quite rich. There's strong disagreement, and I think that we get to many of the things that Kris is talking about in this ethics and finding good solutions because we have broad-based opinions, and we're very open to listening to and embracing the debate. And even inside LVMH, I'm famous for being one of the strongest debaters and willing to stand up in the meeting, even with Mr. Arnault, and disagree with the direction of the points that we're making. Because I so passionately believe this debate is critical, because it's really how we get to best solutions. It's how we solve the sustainability issues, not because any one person has the answer, but because through this rigorous debate, we get to the answer. And so while we're doing very well, I think we can do even better as the board gets used to working together, as we can hopefully impart this characteristic inside the students in the ability to listen and debate topics, the courage to express their points of view, so that we can truly get to the best place. And I feel that is our future, if I think of the North Star, because I don't have the answer, but I know the answer is somewhere inside this, willing to be courageous and express your views, and the ability and willingness to debate the topics in a respectful way.
I want to add one more thing to this that both of you brought up, which is that the board and all of you are also very supportive. We not only debate many things, you're very supportive of us trying many things, and it's okay if we fail. And we're going to try a bunch of things, and I've been doing a few things in my class year after year. I'm still not happy with it, and you saw my reactions, and we continue to improve. So I think that allowing us permission to fail and fail frequently is a gift. I want to take a minute to wrap up our conversation with Michael and Kris today. I first want to point out that I feel very fortunate to be here at Santa Clara University in the Leavey School of Business and to be associated with the Retail Management Institute, to be able to work on this extraordinary opportunity, prepare our students for a time where retail is going through an extraordinary change. And this time period is a time period that is ideal for us because it allows us to focus on our true north and our Jesuit values of the whole person, of building ethical supply chains. It's also an opportunity for us to make our students' education future-proof by repeatedly making them think about the why that happens. This is not a simple opportunity, and it's a great opportunity. And I think I'm delighted to participate in it. I also want to take a moment to also acknowledge how lucky I am to have the kind of industry partners that I have in Kris and Michael, who have been relentless in their support of me, who have allowed me to try many different things and fail, and who keep optimistic about our ability to move forward with all of this. Thank you, Kris and Michael, once again.